Thank you guys so much for joining us here today. I am accompanied by our awesome attorney, Cynthia Milian. She's going to be helping us today on learning a little bit more on asylum, the best practices for an affirmative asylum interview, because there is a difference between affirmative and defensive, but she'll go in and tell you all about that. A little bit on her. Attorney Milian is an associate attorney here at Powers Law Group. She mainly focuses on family-based and removal defense immigration. So she's like a pro at court. She's our pro
much for joining us here today. I am accompanied by our awesome.
We have some language over here. Sorry, we're broadcasting live, so sometimes we have feedback. Anyways, she's the president-elect of MABA, so vote for Cynthia Milian, guys. And she's also a pro bono attorney for the Montgomery County Immigration Law Clinic on her spare time. So she's just the best. But we're going to go ahead and let her take it away with the learning objectives.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we're going to talk briefly over some of the things you should know about an affirmative asylum interview, things that you should keep in mind when preparing. We're going to go over the basics. What are the requirements to establish that you are eligible for asylum? What can you expect on the day of the interview? What we like to refer to as the interview outline, the application, the statement, the security questions that you can expect at an interview, how to avoid the potential red flags, and best practices for a successful interview. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to leave them here. And if we can't get to them, then as always, we always encourage you to call the office so that you can schedule a consultation. So what sets us apart from other firms, we've been practicing and doing asylum for over 10 years, and we have a 90 to 95% approval rate and a long history of experience representing clients from various countries for both the affirmative and defensive asylum. So affirmative is before an immigration officer, and defensive is when you do it in immigration court before an immigration judge. So we've represented clients from Angola, Azerbaijan, China, Cameroon, El Salvador, Honduras, Iran, Jordan, Palestine, Turkey, Venezuela, and many more. So the basics of asylum. So remember, every year people come to the US and they're seeking protection because they've suffered persecution. So in order for you to establish that you are eligible for asylum, you can't just show that there's, fear, general fear occurring of you going back to your country, right? But that there is reasonable fear of past or future persecution based on a particular ground on account of either your race, your religion, your nationality, your membership in a particular social group, or your political opinion. So you have to show that because you identified, let's say, with a different religion in a country, that you were persecuted because of that. And you have to clearly show that to the asylum officer if you're doing this affirmatively. And you have to also prove that you can't go anywhere else within that country to relocate. If you try going north, you're going to face persecution. If you go south, east, or west, that wherever you go, you're going to be subject to that persecution. There's nowhere else that you can relocate. You have no other citizenship in any other countries, in any other world, another country, and that you are applying for this within 1 year of entry. So there are exceptions, right? There's extraordinary circumstances that you can prove, or even if there are changed country conditions that can assist you in that moment. But typically it has to be done within 1 year of entering the US. And you have to be physically present in the US as well. I thought there was a question.
No question. Someone had just said hello.
Okay. And so what can you expect? So let's say you apply for asylum and you get your interview notice, right? What can you expect on the day of your interview? So on the day of your interview, you should bring with you any form of identification. If you've already submitted your passport, your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, all of that is great. And the asylum office is going to have all of those documents, but they're going to want to see the original so that they can inspect them and make sure that they're not fraudulent documents. And you also want to have any other supplemental information that you may have or that you may want to submit. If, for example, you get a declaration from someone that can corroborate your testimony, or if you get a report or a police report or an arrest warrant last minute from your country, then you can take that with you on the day of your interview. But we always recommend our clients, we try to give everything to the asylum office at least a week before the interview to make sure that the asylum officer has sufficient time to review everything. And, make sure that if you do take it on the day of your interview, you take sufficient copies for the asylum officer, for your attorney, and for yourself. So on the day of your interview, if you are not fluent in English and you're going to have access to an interpreter, the asylum office here in Houston now has a system where they offer an interpreter for various different languages. We used to have to take our own interpreters, but now they're offering that service. And that's great for you to have someone to interpret for you throughout the entire interview. If you are applying along with your spouse and your children under 21 and they were included, then they will also have to be there so that they can get fingerprinted, and it'll be up to the discretion of the officer whether or not the officer is going to let them stay in the same room with you on the day of the interview. And also remember that if you take any document that is not in English, it must have a certified translation if it's been translated to English. And things are a little different now. I don't know. I think there may be a slide, but let me just go ahead and tell you. Now with COVID, the asylum interviews used to be where you were in the same room as the asylum officer. And if I was an applicant, then the applicant was there along with the attorney and all the family members. But now with COVID, here in the Houston Asylum Office, we have it where the asylum officer is in a separate room, the applicant is in another room, and the attorney is in another room. And the way that you communicate with one another is through an iPad. So there's an iPad that has a camera and you can see everyone. If you need the services of a translator, then there's a phone available there as well. It's very neat, it's very streamlined, and people have, we've been successful in representing people during COVID. So the interview outline, you should know that first, what you can expect is for you to go through your application. You're going to go through the entire I-589, the application for asylum, withholding, removal, and convention against torture. And then you're going to go into your statement, the actual reason for why you are seeking asylum. And then lastly, the officer will ask security questions. So things that you should remember in the application, right? Remember that consistency equals truth. A lot of the times, people can really, lose credibility from the moment they go in. If they start, giving, conflicting information with dates or with what occurred in the application. So remember that the asylum officer is there because they want to, find a reason to potentially not grant you asylum. And it is very important for you to be credible, for you to be consistent in everything. So definitely before going to your interview, make sure that you've reviewed your application, that you've reviewed the dates, when an arrest occurred or whenever you entered the US. You should know this information better than anyone else. And remember that if you are going to make any edits or amendments, try to take those, one thing that we recommend is to take those amendments or those edits on a separate sheet of paper. So that way, because you're not going to be in front of an asylum officer, you want to be able to just hand a sheet of paper to the officer and tell them under page 3, question 2A, I'd like to amend a passport number, or, I checked off a box that I shouldn't have. So that way it could be easier for them. You want to make it as easy as possible and as seamless for the officer. I see another question. I can't click on it here, but I don't know, Dana, if you can.
Yes, of course. So the question is, we have applied for asylum 14 months ago and there is no interview till this time. How can we speed up the process? Is there any way to make interview faster? We're from Cleveland, Ohio, and Chicago offices takes care of it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so we can talk about that towards the end. This is going to be relatively short, but yes, we'll go through some tips and tricks on how you can try to get your interview expedited.
Perfect.
Second part of your asylum interview is your statement or your story, right? This is the key part. So this is where you show the asylum officer, you're going to tell your story, why it is that you can't go back to the country from which you fear persecution from. So the officer may have already read your statement, but they want to hear from your own words. They want to make sure that everything that you've stated, that those are, true facts, right? And they may ask you some more details about what happened. So they may ask it in a chronological order, an event by event. So just make sure that if you are, in this scenario, right, that you know your timeline, that you know, when did the first event occur? Did it happen in 2005? When did the next event occur? Was it in 2008? And remember all the facts, right? You wanna know this, like I said earlier, better than than the officer. And you want to make sure that you're not giving any conflicting information that could make you seem that you're not credible and that you're making all of this up. And then the last one, just be prepared to discuss all of the security questions, right? If you've received any military or training experience in your former country or of citizenship, then you have to be able to, explain, if was it forced military training? Was it something that you couldn't volunteer for, but that everyone was required to do? All of that. So you make sure that you talk to an attorney before going to an interview, and that you consider how you should answer this to show the officer, why it is that you received this military training or how it went about. And one thing that we always like to do with our clients is that we have them list out a list of the countries that they've traveled to and for what purpose, if it was for personal or for business. And when, and especially be prepared if it's a long list. This is not something that asylum officers ask for, or that an asylum office, or even that is a requirement by USCIS, but it's easier to kind of show the officer, if you were traveling to spread the gospel and you're religious and you're seeking asylum based on a religious ground, then that would be a good way for you to show that. Or if you're doing it because you were helping a mission to spread, a religion or particular social group, whatever it may be, this would be something helpful for the officer. And so, how can you avoid potential red flags? Remember how we talked about the 1-year filing deadline. If you don't do it, make sure that you know how to defend that late filing, because a lot of the times, that may be an automatic reason for why they refer a case to court, because you haven't filed within the 1 year. Provide a clear and organized statement. Make sure that everything is chronological. Don't start with an event from 2008 and then go to an event from 2021 and then go to an event from 2005. You want to make it as clear as possible. You want to be consistent. You don't want to jump around. And you want to just have a clear explanation for things that, that may have, they may be potentially a reason for a denial, right? If you've traveled to a suspect country, you want to provide those explanations as clear as possible to the officer and leave no room for doubt. And best practices, know your timeline, understand the weakness. If you're applying late, understand how are you going to properly explain to an officer why it is that you waited 6 years to apply for asylum. How are you going to explain to an officer why you visited such suspect country if it was forced upon you to go there? So understand that and understand and know how to answer those questions. You want to be truthful. You want to pace yourself. You want to make sure that you answer the questions that the officer gives you, give sufficient detail, but you don't want to go off on a tangent that you forget the question and potentially annoy the officer. And you want to know when a translator is necessary as well. I know a lot of the times people think, their English is great. But when it comes to the interview, they get nervous. Maybe it was probably better for them to use a translator. So just be very realistic with yourself when it comes to that as well. And how can we help you? So, if you're considering applying for asylum or if you've already applied, right? We can assist you in including, relevant articles or country conditions that can support your asylum claim. If you have an affidavit, or a statement to include along with your application. We can assist you in editing that and helping you so that it can be clear and concise, assist you in how you can provide you guidance on how to best present your case with the asylum office, assist in reviewing your asylum application, if there are any amendments that need to be made. And we can also even simulate a mock interview. I mean, that's something that we include with most of our cases, where we have mock interviews with our clients so that they can know what to expect on the day of the interview. And before we go into these questions and answers, I mean, let me see. Well, let me just answer these and then I'll answer the question that was asked earlier. It says lots of changes have happened during the past 4 years that have complicated the asylum process. Consult with an experienced attorney before attempting to file something on your own. So yes. And for example, the person that asked, they've applied for asylum 18 months ago. So some offices have what is called a short list. I believe Chicago may be one of them. But you have to be careful, because whenever you get added to something called a short list, it means that they'll place you on a list where they can call you at a moment's notice, and then you have to show up to an interview within 2 days. So you want to be careful. I understand that everyone maybe wants to have their interview as soon as possible to just stop living in a situation of, ambiguous, where you won't know what's going to happen next. But you want to just be sure that you're prepared, right? That you've read through your asylum application, that your statement is up to date, so that way you're not scrambling. You and your attorney are not scrambling last minute to prepare. There's also expedite requests that are available. We've successfully filed a few of those in the past 6 months to a year. And those are when you have a compelling reason for why your interview should be expedited and why you should be placed in front of the line. So for example, if you're going through, health issues, if you're suffering some psychological trauma or anything like that, then it's good for you to consult with an attorney to see if that's a valid ground for you to request that expedite request. And it's very important to have an experienced attorney with you in filing this and, representing you throughout the process. Like, we mentioned before, we have, years of experience doing this. You want to be careful. You don't want to miss an interview or go to an interview and then, if you unfortunately get a referral notice, miss that, and then miss court, and then end up with an order of deportation in absentia or in absence. So it's very important that you talk to an attorney, that you get information from someone that has been through this process, that knows how it works, and that knows, what could be the potential weaknesses in your case. So I'll turn it over to Dana so that she can give you more information if you'd like to reach us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Attorney Milian. So I hope we answered all your questions. Again, if you do have any additional questions or that might be a little bit more specific to your case, please feel free to give us a call at 713-589-2085. Again, that's 713-589-2085, or send us an email at contact@rubypowerslaw. We're always so happy to help. And it looks like someone just asked another question. Let me go ahead and read it out loud for you, Attorney Milian. They said, thank you for this form. Well, of course, thanks for joining us. Is it advisable to go ahead with my interview coming up this August, though I'm thinking of switching my status to marriage? And when can I come for a conversation with my attorney?
Yeah, so those are very specific questions. And I'm just going to give some general advice here. You always want to make sure that if you choose an alternate process, right? If there is a valid asylum application pending, that you want to continue to go forward with it, because nothing is secure. Even if you choose to pursue another status, it may be that you don't get that. So that's all I'll say to that. But you feel free to give us a call and we can talk more in depth about your process and see, if you do end up getting married and you've successfully adjusted, then what the next steps would be to a pending asylum application and how you can go about withdrawing potentially, or seeing what needs to be done there.
Awesome.
Call us at any time. We're open Monday through Friday, and we're also open on Saturdays as well.
Awesome. Thank you guys again for all your questions. And if you ever have, like I said, any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always available to you guys. And again, if you missed any of our past presentations, you can find them on YouTube. You can find them on our Facebook, or if you just want a direct link, give us a call and our team will be sure to send you guys a direct link to any webinar that we may have had. And right now we're going to go off and do this presentation, but in Spanish. We really do appreciate all of you guys joining us today. And we hope to see you all on our next Friday weekly webinar. Thank you all again and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.